हेलो। 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 Good afternoon, everyone. How are you all? Hope everyone is doing well. And we are in the process of starting the program. So we have the speaker already online. Dr. Industry is already there online. So please start joining. Many people have started joining. So very nice. So you are online. Industry, are you able to hear me? Hello? Dr. Industry, are you able to hear me? Your voice is not coming out. So I think you need to unmute. Can you unmute yourself? Your voice is not coming out. Your voice is not coming out. Voice is not heard. No, not able to hear you. I think you need to see that voice is coming. I think webcam is having the
Voice.
mic, I believe. Hello.
Okay. Hello, sir. I'll try that.
Now it is working. Now
Okay.
I'm able
Okay.
to. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, it is
Yes.
working fine. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Nice. Okay, don't switch off. Right now, everything is working fine. So let me start the program with the introduction, so that by the time everyone join, we'll finish off the introduction, and then we'll straight away start with the program. Hope you are able
Okay,
to hear me well, properly. My voice is clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's
Good.
for me.
Yeah. Very nice. Someone also responded. Okay, let me start with the presentation of speaker directly. Okay, so welcome everyone. So we'll just give 1 or 2 more minutes, so that we can start having everyone. Okay. So I'm very happy to introduce. Are you able to see my slides? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. So let me introduce Dr. Industry. She has done MBBS, MD, and currently she is working as associate professor at Siddhganga Medical College. She started at, she did her post-graduation at MS Ramaya Medical College, Bangalore. And then she worked in Siddhartha Medical College as a senior resident, and also she continued to work as assistant professor. Now she is promoted to associate professor, and she is working at Siddhganga Medical College, Tumkur, Karnataka. And she is a member secretary at Institutional Ethics Committee, SSMC, earlier. And then she has numerous publications, and so she has also done other additional courses related to ADCOM and ICMR requirements for promotion, as all of us know. So now we have a very interesting topic, that is on chirality of the drugs. So thank you so much for volunteering and accepting to do the webinar on chirality of the drugs. It's very important. Many times it is confusing, and definitely it is a postgraduate students chapter, and which will be very interesting, and a lot of good things to learn today. And before that, I would like to introduce Medical Pharmacology Society to all of you. As all of you know, Medical Pharmacology Society is a national society working for the development of pharmacology field, and mainly MD pharmacologists are allowed to be the life members, and all other stream of pharmacologists and life science professionals, they can support the development of pharmacology by associating with us. And we do encourage webinars coming from various streams, including any pharmacy background or biotechnology background, everyone. So you don't need to feel bad that you are not included in this. We will definitely. In fact, we had a webinar coming from a pharmacist. Very nicely it was done on a drug information center. So similarly, we have initiated recently a basic course, like a certificate course in biostatistics, which is already started. First batch started, and it's going on. And after this batch is over, we will see if there is a further requirement, and we will definitely support the people who are very much interested to participate in such course. And we will be coming up with additional courses through the society. As all of you know, that society is a non-profit organization. All the funds that are generated through the society will be used back for the development of the society. As all of you know, by this time, we have conducted various conferences, Medical Pharmacology Society conferences. So last year we conducted in AIIMS Guwahati. Before that, we did in Savita Medical College. And next year, 2026, MTS Con will be held at CD Cymer, Bangalore. We are in the process of finalizing the date, most probably in the middle of May. At that time, most probably, second entrance of MBBS is over, and all the marks are consolidated, and we will be ready to conduct the conference. So May around 20th week of, where the 20th falls on. So most probably, so we'll announce officially. So this just to indicate you. So please do prepare for attending the conference. As all of you know, attending a conference means it should be made more productive by doing the presentations, like paper presentations and poster presentations and prize winning. Like you can win prizes. Most probably we will have additional activities. Maybe we don't know. I'll come back with the complete agenda. And there will be a lot of awards for the Lifetime Achievement Award and Senior Most Promising Pharmacologist Award, and Young Pharmacologist Award. Speakers, again, Senior Pharmacologist Speaker, Young Pharmacologist Speaker, Lifetime Achievement Speaker, and international delegates will be there. International, speakers will also be there, and various activities. And if you go back to the recordings that are already there in the YouTube channel, you will see that so we do conduct the programs more professionally, and a lot of good things happens during the conference. So we look forward for having you all in the near future, hoping that our efforts will help you all in the development of pharmacology and your skills and your development also. And we are, as all of you know, that we are in the process of releasing most probably 3 volumes or 4 volumes. I'm a little bit afraid, so most probably 4 volumes, because we had overwhelming response for releasing the book on crucial pharmacology trends. So many 120 authors volunteered to write their chapters, and they have submitted good number of chapters, very interesting articles, and we are in the process of completed editing of CPT volume 1, no, volume 3, and volume 4 is going on, and most probably volume 4, 5, and 6 also may come in. So why do we need all these volumes? Definitely, this is to support the in-depth understanding of pharmacology, especially targeting to postgraduates exam success. I think there is no other resource available intending to this purpose, and I'm sure you will find all our books very useful. And we have also released the clinical trial management book, which is already available and very much accepted by various authorities. And in that way, I suggest all of you to go back and search, like in Amazon, the books are available, Notion Press books are available, and hope you will find them useful and you can, purchase them at your convenience. So with this introduction to society, we are almost near, and let me stop sharing the screen. And I request Dr. Industry, can you please take over? And again, as I said, it's your day, and it's a very interesting day for you. I'm sure all the participants will get benefited out of your enthusiasm and your knowledge, and I'm sure everyone will be better at the end of the class. Looking forward to hear from you, and please, this is your stage takeover. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you to Medical Pharmacological Society and also Dr. Shivamurthy sir for giving me an opportunity to be part of this. I'm very happy to be giving a lecture or webinar on chirality of drugs, which is one of the topics which is usually not much thought of in postgraduates, and also these days this is gaining a much of importance. Drug design, drug development, personalized medicine, and many of the things. So I'll be highlighting about all those things in a gist. Actually, to start with, there's a mystery at the heart of life, and that whatever that is exists on the earth, usually even at the molecular level, life is asymmetrical. So most of the organic molecules, they have a mirror images, not only the drugs, every molecule that exists have a mirror images to each other, and it tends to pick one mirror image over the other. That we call it as homochirality. Not all the drugs or all the molecules can be used. Only one mirror image is mostly used in our daily life. Just like, for example, one example can be your left and right. See, both are superimposable, whereas you need to use separate gloves for it. Don't fit in with the same gloves. In a similar manner, chiral molecules are arranged differently in space. Depending on the molecular geometry, there are classified as right-handed and left-handed. That I'll be dealing it with you later. So myself, I am Dr. Industry, Associate Professor, Department of Pharmacology, and talking about chirality of drugs. So I'll be talking today's webinar under these headings. First, I'll tell about history of how chirality came into existence, introduction about the few of the things, because we are not much aware. We know the terminologies, but what it actually means, we should be knowing before we get into actual chirality. what are the nomenclatures that are coming. Since we are all pharmacologists, I want to highlight about the pharmacology and how it affects on pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of the human beings, about toxicity that has happened because of chirality, and what are the trends that are being developed due to chirality, and FDA guidelines that are there, and what are the separation techniques that are being used as the future of chirality. So before we start, for anything, history is important. So for history, I want to share a small slide, small video of it. Can you all see the video?
And some scientists fear pose an unprecedented risk.
Can you all see the video?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Research into chirality could reveal how life began, whether it exists in other worlds. And some scientists fear pose an unprecedented risk to its existence on Earth. In 1848, when famed chemist Louis Pasteur was a graduate student in Paris, he made the first of his world-changing discoveries. Pasteur was studying the chemistry of tartaric acid, a crystalline byproduct of wine production that's also involved in many biological processes. When he synthesized tartrate crystals in his lab, Pasteur noticed that half of the crystals had edges that pointed left and half pointed right.
He could see actually that they looked different by eye, and the relationship was mirror image.
Pasteur exposed the crystals to. He found that the right-handed crystals rotated the light clockwise, while the left-handed ones rotated it counterclockwise.
And he made the connection that whatever asymmetrical properties embedded in these crystals made them behave differently when they interact with polarized light.
Based on this insight, Pasteur believed that the mirror image crystals were made of the same molecules, but that these molecules were arranged differently in space.
And that's where the left-handed, right-handed chirality came from originally.
He had discovered molecular chirality. And he noticed something else. While the tartrate he produced in his lab yielded 50-50 mix of right and left-handed crystals.
And that was, in fact, the new big discovery. Life isn't like the inanimate world. Life was special in the way it was homochiral.
Only products originating under the influence of light are asymmetrical, Pasteur wrote.
So as you saw, the history. So basically, Louis Pasteur was the one who discovered something called as chirality exists in this world. He used the isomers of sodium ammonium tartarate, and they stood with the plain polarized light, and there was changes in the direction. It was clockwise and counterclockwise. That's how they came to the term called as chirality. And next being Van 't Hoff, who actually depicted the 3D structure of this and optical activity of the enantiomers, and Fischer with his eponymous Fischer projection, where you remember D-glucose, L-glucose chemical formula we used to write in case of second P1 by Fischer. So that's about the small short topic about history. Coming to introduction, chiral, it is obtained from the Greek word named chia, which means handedness. It was coined, and chirality basically means handedness. So about 50% of the drugs that are available in the market are chiral compounds, and yet there are even 50% amount are there with racemic mixtures also. So before we start with chiral, I'm talking about chiral. So you should know what is actually chiral. Chiral is an atom where it is held by the 4 ligands. Can you see there's a single carbon atom which is holding 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So, and those two are mirror images, but they are not superimposable. When you close it, just like your hands, They are mirror images, but they are not superimposable. And this molecule or this image is a chiral. Basically, in most of the molecules, the chiral atom, which is at the center, chiral center, will usually be carbon. It is called the center molecule is called as chiral center or a stereo center. Or in case of this, it's a asymmetric carbon atom. But there are few drugs where the chiral atom is not carbon. It can be sulfur in case of omeprazole. Can you see here? It is a sulfur. Sorry, something happened to this. Okay. Okay, it's a sulfur in case of omeprazole. Can you all hear? Someone please say. Can you all hear? Yes. Okay. Thank you. So, okay. So it's,
we can hear, ma'am. Sometimes it is breaking.
Okay, I'll try. I try to be very loud. Okay. If you can't hear, please let me know. Yes. And in case of cyclophosphamide.
Yes, yes.
In case of cyclophosphamide, it's a P, phosphorus atom. Can you see that orange color phosphorus atom? That is a chiral center. And in case of methaqualone, it can be a nitrogen. Okay, so the chiral center can vary from various atoms. Most of the molecules will have carbon as the chiral center. So coming to isomer, you have heard of this term in right from high school, I think. So isomers, before we move on to the next level, I want to brush all the important nomenclatures and also definitions. So isomers are the compounds where they have a similar molecular formula, but different structural formula or spatial arrangement. Can you see here? There is a picture of chiral carbon and achiral carbon. What is this chiral carbon? It has in first picture the center carbon, which is a chiral carbon, which is attached to the 4 different substituents. Whereas in achiral carbon, 2 substituents are hydrogen, and there can be a superimposable mirror image. So the first one, chiral or achiral, it is called as achiral. Chiral carbon is non-superimposable and achiral can be superimposable. And this, which has same molecular formula, same atom linkage, same bonding distance, but basically if they are differing in the 3D arrangement, it is called as spatial or stereoisomers. They have everything in same, but in the spatial arrangements, it has some different effects. That is stereoisomer. So the stereoisomer can have one part as a configurational isomers. What is this configurational? It is of 2 types, enantiomers and diastereomers. Can you see in the picture where this, the top one, which is a non-superimposable but is a mirror image, that is an enantiomer. That means they have identical physical properties, chemical properties, except for their effect. Basically for the optical activity, they have difference. Whereas in diastereomers, they can have 2 or more chiral centers and they are non-superimposable. And one side you have bromide, another side you have hydrogen, and they are not superimposable. They have been exchanged in the same molecule itself. They have different physical property, chemical property, and but it is easy to characterize since the molecules and arrangements are very much different. Okay, this is a 2 type. One is enantiomer, another is diastereomer, which is a part of stereoisomers or spatial isomers. Coming to very important thing, which is racemic mixture. What do you mean by racemic? Basically, it contains 2 enantiomers in an equal amount. Just like each one, R enantiomer, S enantiomer are optically active. When do we call it as optically active? Because it can pass through plane polarized light and changes its activity. Similar way, even the residues also have optical activity. As you have seen in the history video, you could see, right, that molecule, when was it crossed through the point polarized light, it changed its direction to right. Few changed it to left. Okay, right? Similarly, that's why you call it as optical activity, and racemic mixture also optically active. And one examples where both R and S isomers are combined together in an equal form is thalidomide. It was marketed as a racemic mixture rather than the pure one enantiomer. So coming to another terminology called as eutomer. What is this? One form. And we will take the same example of thalidomide. Okay, we have both R isomer and S isomer, right? So it's a bioactive enantiomer having high pharmacological activity or the effect, desired effect. What was the reason thalidomide was discovered? Basically for anti-nausea medication during the for morning sickness, basically, right? Yes. So that was the intention to develop thalidomide, and the R isomer had anti-nausea, but they also thought S enantiomer was completely inactive, but they did check. We can give both R and S. R isomer definitely had a good effect, and it had got good anti-nausea effect in pregnant females. But this S form of enantiomer, which was inactive, completely inactive, showed a bad effect or detrimental effect. This is called as dystomer. Positive effect is called eutomer. The negative or detrimental effect is called dystomer. Coming to nomenclature, as you all know, I kept on telling twice or thrice, these chiral compounds are optically active compounds. When they rotate the plane polarized light, whenever the molecule crosses the plane polarized light, if it changes to right, it is called dextrorotatory or clockwise, or if it is left rotate to left, or levorotatory or anti-clockwise. There is also one other assignments like R, rectus or right side, S for sinister or left side are assignments. So how do they assign this? We have one rule called as Kahn-Ingold pre-log rule. Okay, so how do they give priority? There are so many molecules in a drug, right? There are so many C, so many I, N, O. So many atoms are there in that molecule. How do they give priority? So they have used this rule, Kahn-Ingold pre-log rule, where first, what is the first step? Basically, they identify the chiral center. Which is the chiral center? Usually, carbon atom will be the chiral center. Suppose in most of the molecules, thinking that. Then assign the priorities to the substituents. How do you assign? Basically, high atomic number. See, suppose in this case, if you can see I greater than Br greater than Cl, like that. Iodine has a 53 as a autonomic number. So if iodine is present in that molecule, that will be the first priority chiral atom. Okay, if two substituents will be having the same thing, then along the chain, if you go, whichever is having the next one will have, and there is a muded two. Can you hear? Yes, two oxygens. So the assignment of priority of the chiral drugs is basically on high atomic number. More than next will be atoms bound to the chiral carbon. Next will be double or triple bonds, and they orient the molecule, position the molecule so that the lowest priority points away behind the plane, and trace the path from 1, 2, 3. So this is how a priority to a chiral molecule is given. That is not much of importance, but you should know as a postgraduate, this is something you should know, how assignment of the priority to the chiral compound will be given. And why are we reading? Why are we reading about this chirality, which in such cases? Because we have understood that these enantiomers interact differently with biological targets. Okay, So we have so many is supposed to act. So enantiomers will have different effect on them. Each one with each example, I'll be going to deal with it in next few slides. And you also should know one example for the second point is that, which is that example? One enantiomer is therapeutically active, another may be inactive. Which is the example for that? Can you all hear?
Omeprazole.
Okay. And the recent example which I gave, one enantiomer will be, yes, thalidomide. We thought it as an inactive molecule, but it caused teratogenicity and toxicity, right? Yeah, that example for second point. It also influences pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. Yes, all that absorption, distribution, everything will be affected because of enantiomeric activity. That's why we have to read about this. And regulatory agencies, they require studies to do this. Before doing completely giving the data regarding thalidomide, that's why it had caused so many babies having phocomelia, right? So they have to do regulatory studies and also control the chirality for drug approval. I'll tell you about this drug approval thing also. And this chirality will help in rational drug design, minimizing the side effects and maximizing the efficacy. That is what the main fund of developing any drug, to minimize the side effects and maximize the efficacy. With the help of this chirality, you can actually improve the drug effects. And also these days we talk about personalized medicine, newer drug delivery system. There also it has some important effect. That's why you should know about chirality of drugs if you are into research and also for the academic purpose. And coming to pharmacology of chiral drugs, it can be either one, in case of changes of the chiral drugs, racemic drug. Racemic is 2 equal amount of enantiomers in a single drug, right? One example is thalidomide, R and S thalidomide. Okay, I'll leave about thalidomide, we'll come to other drugs. Racemic drugs mean one major enantiomer, bioactive, or one major, what we call as eutomer. What is eutomer? We just discussed eutomer and distomer. What is eutomer?
Positive therapeutically effective.
Yes, therapeutical effective and desired effect. And distomer is?
Undesirable effect.
Yes, undesirable or detrimental effect. So one of few of the examples of it are antiarrhythmics, local anesthetics, anticonvulsants, PPIs, etc., where the levo form of beta blocker is much more effective in blocking the beta receptors and also in the conditions where beta blockers can be used. But in case of hyperthyroidism, the drug what you use, propranolol, is D form of propranolol, which is most active. Okay, even in hypnotics also, levo form has better sedative effects rather than the dextro form. That is one eutomer being the taking over than the other. And there's something called as chiral inversion. What is this chiral? The R isomer is turned into S isomer inside the body, or in vitro also. One example, it is usually an enzyme mediator. Your body contains so many enzymes that is involved in this. One example being NSAIDs, which is ibuprofen. The S-ibuprofen is 100 times more potent than the R form of ibuprofen. Okay, why? How? It converts in with the help of hepatic enzymes. It converts this R is converted to S, and also its S is converted to R. Okay, this is called as chiral version inside, in vivo chiral version, whereas that is unidirectional. It cannot convert back into R. Next, what is bidirectional? Where one form is converted into other and the other form is converted back into the other with the help of enzymes. One example is diazepam, oxazepam. These are the ones where inside in vivo, with the help of hepatic enzyme, they can be converted from R to S and S to R. And that also happened with thalidomide. Coming to individual things, chiral drugs and pharmacokinetics. We have 4 different things that are coming under pharmacokinetics: absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion. So I'll be talking about that in detail. So you all know in chiral environment, stereoisomers, they might experience selective absorption, different protein binding, enzyme interactions, metabolism, and DNA binding. So they have a different PK, PD, and also adverse event profile. So you have to, basically you have to, the given structures, a capacity to accommodate these chiral disparities and also get a good molecule is a challenging thing. Coming to absorption. So I'll talk about chirality and absorption. You should know. So I'll talk about racemate mixture on also pure enantiomer, either R or S. So suppose you're taking a racemate mixture, the solubility, it is all obviously, it's a big molecule which has both R and S. The solubility will be very less. The pure enantiomer, there will be more solubility, more dissolution rate, and greater bioavailability compared to the racemic mixture. You should know that. For example, the topical application of an enantiomeric drug is significantly greater, it will have a greater penetrating, skin penetration than the racemic mixture. Obviously, it's a big molecule, it is difficult to penetrate, whereas pure enantiomer, for example, pure enantiomer of ibuprofen has a lower melting point and a higher solubility than that of the racemate mixture of same ibuprofen. Coming to distribution, variability in the distribution due to chirality both influence both efficacy and also basic pharmacological properties of the drug, toxicity profiles, etc. One example for distribution is that you all know P-glycoproteins are the drug effect transporters that are involved, and they're also stereospecifically active. One example is mefloquine. Okay, L form of mefloquine, it inhibits P-glycoprotein. This P-glycoprotein is also having so many substrates like cyclosporin, vinblastine, etc. Okay, so whenever it inhibits this P-glycoprotein, the chances of inhibiting the other molecules, the metabolism of the other molecules, cyclosporin and vinblastine, will also be more. And one more example is, yes, UP weekend, S form of, compared to the R form, it is having higher vasoconstrictive property, which is not seen with the R form. That's why when it has a vasoconstrictor, the drug will help in remaining in the injection site for the prolonged duration and is longer duration of action for analgesia. So this is how the chirality also helps in improving, prolonging the drug action and also increasing its efficacy. Coming to protein binding. Okay, similar way, chirality also has some effect on protein binding. These molecules, human albumin, alpha-1 acid glycoprotein, are also stereospecifically active. These forms like S-ketoprophine or S-chloroquine, they have high affinity for human albumin, whereas compared to the counterparts, R form, okay, even R form of propranolol or S form of verapamil has a higher binding capacity with the alpha-1 acid glycoprotein compared to the other one. So enantiomer with the highest plasma protein binding will have a low free form. It is the common rule of any, the significance of plasma protein binding whenever we talk about it, this is the thing, whereas when it has a high plasma protein binding, there is a decreased amount of the free drug that is available in the plasma, right? So there may be, because of this, there may be difference in the pharmacological activity, duration of action, and also toxicity profile between the two enantiomers of S and R. And the changes in the plasma protein can also be species different, dependent, and may lead to changes in the drug behavior between the humans and animals. That's where teratogenicity due to thalidomide was not tried within the human beings, and it had some effect in the human beings. In the short, that's why these changes in the plasma proteins stereospecifically can be species dependent also. Coming to metabolism. So as expected by the enzymatic process, I told you it affects on the absorption, it affects on the transport carriers, it affects on the efflux mechanisms. Similar way, it also affects on the enzymatic processes. One such good example is hydroxybupropion. Okay, it is a drug that are active at dopamine, norepinephrine, and nicotinic receptors. At usual therapeutic concentration, it is hydroxylated. Okay, it is hydroxylated to metabolically active. The normal bupropion is hydroxically activated to S form of hydroxybupropion and a significantly greater metabolism. When metabolized faster, the clearance is also faster and there will be decreased plasma concentration. So even the different forms, enantiomers can also have different metabolism reaction. Similar way, in case of bupropion, it was hydroxylation. In case of salbutamol, it is sulfation. Similar way, R form will have a greater metabolism, greater clearance and low plasma concentration. And in carvedilol also, S form with the help of glucoamidation. So basically, there is a change in the enzymes and the metabolism pathways, but the final result is there is faster metabolism, greater clearance and lower plasma concentration in these cases. And coming to elimination. So we learned about absorption, we learned about distribution, we learned about metabolism also. So I'll be asking you one example for each after we finish. Okay. And I finish this. Elimination. Coming to elimination, enantiomers of chiral drug have different rates of chiral drug clearance. This may be due to stereospecifically active drug metabolizing enzymes or renal, biliary or any excretory transporters. So just like enzymes are stereospecifically active, even the transporters, the molecules that are related to excretion are also stereospecifically and optically active. One example is R-ketamine inhibits the rapid clearing of S-ketamine. The renal tubular secretion of dextro form of cetirizine is faster and better compared to the levo form of cetirizine. Okay, so this is how the changes in the chirality or the enantiomeric activity is seen and it's coming to pharmacodynamics. We learned about pharmacokinetics regarding absorption, distribution, etc. So coming to pharmacodynamics, when we are discussing about pharmacodynamics, basically we think about adverse effects and also receptor interaction. We all know that the common lock and key model, right? Lock and key model is a common model where whenever there is a receptor, the drug molecule comes and binds. For example, you can see here in this molecule, it is the same molecule, but there is just between the two, there is a just change in the ammonium. So just a small change in the ammonium, change in the molecule will not fit that molecule into the receptor. Just a simple change in the molecule or simple change in the receptor configuration, it will not hold the molecule. That's how even in spatial arrangements, the molecule should not change its, receptor interaction will always depend on the chirality. One such example where the receptor interaction is there is vigabatrin, where S-enantiomer successfully and irreversibly inhibits GABA transaminase enzyme, whereas R-enantiomer does not have any activity. So we go for S form of vigabatrin. Coming to propranolol, it's one of the drug very commonly used, and S form of this propranolol is having higher activity, 100% greater antagonism at beta receptors, has more bioavailability, longer half-life, and also strong alpha-1 acid protein binding capacity. And also not only the proteins and receptors are involved, even the DNA are also involved stereospecifically. One example is cisplatin to transplatin, where an isomer of cisplatin, which has no therapeutic effect, this may be due to changes in the DNA protein molecule or different structure or stability differences. Okay, so some of the examples for chiral antidotes. So since I told about receptors, so you should also know what are the available chiral anti-poisonings. One such poisonings or drug overdose. So one such example is dextrose, which is a D form of glucose. It's an antidote to reverse hypoglycemia, which is there. And the L form of N-acetylcysteine is used for the treatment of paracetamol-induced hepatotoxicity or nephropathy. And L form of carnitine is being used for valproate toxicity or anthracycline cardiotoxicity. And coming to leucovorin is a levo form of leucovorin is being used for methotrexate as a treatment for methotrexate toxicity, and even endogenously also leucovorin being used for the same. Fine. So I am giving many examples so that you should know, even whenever you reading about these drugs, please highlight that also, because these are these days very much important in order to get the better efficacy. And till now we learned about successful chirality. What is this disastrous? I already dealt with one, which is being thalidomide, and I've been telling about it. That is where the real picture of chirality came into existence, where many number of studies are being done under these headings. So disastrous, basically it was a disaster in case of teratogenicity because of the chiral compounds. Okay. So what was that? One such example. Why there was toxicity because of this enantiomers is that because of the stereospecifically active. See, every molecule, every enzyme receptor, they're all stereospecifically active. It may be due to maternal or fetal enzymes or fetal receptors or transplacental transport mechanisms, because of which the toxicity because of these drugs will happen. That's why they are categorized under category X. Drugs should never be used in pregnant females. One example is valproic acid. S form of this valproic acid inhibits histone deacetylase. It leads to more amount of chromatin and incretion. So S form is more teratogenic than the R. 9 times more potent, more teratogenic than the racemate mixture also. So S form is never should be tried. Right? So the teratogenic effect that you see with it is fetal valproate syndrome, where there is a spinal neural tube defects is most commonly seen. Okay, one such example for reproductive toxicity due to chiral drugs is valproic acid valproic acid. And second being, it's already been dealt and told many times, thalidomide, which is used, it is an angiogenesis inhibitor and also was used for anti-nausea. And R form has good effect, whereas S form had bad effect, and thousands of babies, almost 10,000 babies had phocomelia because of this. And this chiral inversion inside the body in vivo has also a very bad risk. That's why they have banned this completely. Only it is being repurposed for multiple myeloma and erythema nodularis. And coming to retinoic acid, which is also one more drug which has some reproductive toxicity. See, alitretinoin is a cis form of retinoic acid. Even isotretinoin is a 13 cis form of retinoic acid, which was used for these conditions, acne or Kaposi sarcoma lesions. Okay, this cis form is not having any teratogenicity, but it is not completely safe, but it undergoes category C, where the risk is definitely there. Still, to some extent, a topical form can be tried if it is needed and there is no other option that is available. Okay, but oral tretinoin is completely banned. It is under category X. It is completely contraindicated in pregnancy. So what are the teratogenic effects we see with retinoic acid is spontaneous abortions, craniofacial, thymic and CNS malformations. What is the reason for teratogenicity in this case of retinoic acid is cis form of this retinoic acids are converted into trans form. There's a chiral inversion inside the body. Though you have given cis form, it is converted into trans form, which is highly teratogenic. Okay, here the main culprit is chiral inversion. So we have three important drugs where due to chiral compounds, they had reproductive toxicity and teratogenicity. So coming to trends in chiral drugs. We have something called as chiral switch. What is this? I told you about racemic mixture, right? So with with the help of with the use of this racemic mixture, they come up with the single enantiomer, which is highly therapeutically active, better efficacy, high safety. Okay, so that is called as chiral switch. So development of a single enantiomer from a previously already there in the market as a Racemic. So you are getting a pure enantiomer of it. It is called as chiral switch. What will they get? With the help of this, they can extend the drug patency for another 5 years. That is where the pharma companies are doing this. They are changing the Racemic mixture and getting the highly therapeutically effective single enantiomer, both for the betterment of the society, and also to get the extension of patents. This is how one such example is ibuprofen. There was 2 forms, both S and R are part of ibuprofen. It was a Racemic mixture, and there was 5 years exclusivity for this form, Racemic mixture. There was less side effect, and after that they came up with the single form of S, because S ibuprofen is always better. It was newly regulated product, and there was extra of 3 years exclusivity for this new molecule as a patent. One such example, another such example, one we spoke about ibuprofen, another such example for chiral switch is that omeprazole, you all know, right? It was a blockbuster drug for peptic ulcer disease. Okay, in 1989, omeprazole was launched as a Racemic mixture. Okay, then they discovered that in 1997, they discovered that S-omeprazole as a higher, superior pharmacokinetic profile with a lesser interpatient variability. So they thought, instead of preparing a Racemic mixture, let us go with S form of omeprazole. In 2001, S-omeprazole, a pure form of S enantiomers with the improved efficacy and reduced drug frequency, was introduced. And the successful, it is one of the examples for successful chiral switch, and there was extension of the patency for this S form of omeprazole. So what are these advantages of this chiral switch? One is enhanced efficacy. Yes, there's a higher therapeutic effect and requiring very less amount. That means potency is good, efficacy is good, safety is also good. That means potentially harmful inactive substances are eliminated, less number of drug interactions, less adverse effects. And we also should think about pharmacokinetics. Okay, they cannot have erratic absorption, they cannot have the different volume of distribution, right? So it has more consistent absorptions, metabolism, and interpatient variability was also less in case of chiral switch. What they had discovered, that was the advantage. And simplifying the dosing also, because of it, multiple dosing need not be required, and the therapeutic drug regimen designing was also better. So these were the 4 advantages with the chiral switch, and because of this, many of the pharmaceutical companies these days are coming up with chiral switch for both improvement of efficacy and potency and safety of the drug. So some of the successful chiral switch is that one is ibuprofen, which I already told you. Another being ofloxacin. Other drugs are ketoprofen, salbutamol, omeprazole, bupivacaine. I already told most of the drugs. Cetirizine, citalopram, and ketamine. So coming to ibuprofen, these has a faster onset. The S form has a faster onset and lower adverse effects. And next being ofloxacin, where there was increased potency after changing from Racemic mixture to S-ofloxacin. For ketoprofen, it was increased faster onset of action. See, these are some of the advantages of changing that was claimed. They had to claim, okay, this is the change and the better efficacy, better for the converting the Racemic mixture to the single. So these were the claims that had told. For salbutamol, it was reduced adverse effects and improved tolerability. And for omeprazole, it was increased activation and less variable metabolism. And for ketamine also, there was increased potency and recovery. Basically, they thought about potency, efficacy, adverse effect profile, and faster onset of action and prolonged duration of action. These were the 5 things they actually thought of and changed from racemic to single enantiomer, and these were successful in getting that. But there were few failed chiral switches also, which was fenfluramine. It was converted to dextro form of fenfluramine. This conversion had made so many adverse effects like valvular heart diseases. The patient had pulmonary hypertension because of this. That's why they stopped or banned this drug at all. Fine. So this is one of the failed chiral switch, and that are there in the pipeline are zopiclone, fluoxetine, because these are known to cause so many adverse effects. So they because of the racemic mixture, they are trying to make it as a single enantiomers. So FDA guidelines, they tell you that guidelines on the stereochemistry was established by US FDA in 1992, entitled with the book named Development of New Stereospecific Drugs. What was that? I mean, the guidelines had few of the points. I'll tell you. The absolute stereochemistry to be known for the compounds with chiral center, and they should be established early in the discovery itself, not later. Okay, before they even come, the drug has to the market, that has to be checked before the drug discovery and development. And we have to do enantiomer specific studies for single enantiomers, preclinical and clinical studies that has to be typically required only for the active enantiomer. Basically, they were doing it only for the active enantiomer, but they also should give the result of the distomer or the another molecule. It may be no therapeutic, having no activity at all, or having teratogenicity. That also should be both R and S form of the enantiomers also should be properly assessed in both preclinical and clinical trials. And racemic drugs needs scientific justification over the single enantiomers and with studies regarding pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, and both the forms. So they have to provide results of, and they have to give a scientific justification for both. Why are they doing racemic mixture? Why are they doing single or combined mixtures? So these were the guidelines that was laid down by FDA. So coming to chiral separation techniques. Till now, we learned about what is chirality, how chirality is important to us, chirality and pharmacokinetics. How does it affect on absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion? How does it affect on pharmacodynamics, receptor interactions? What are the chiral antidotes? Which are the successful chiral? What is chiral switch? What are the successful chiral switches? What was the failed switch? And how to separate these chiral separation techniques? We have, it's a procedure where it is used to separate the two isomers of the racemic compound in industries as well as in a clinical analysis. In enantiomers having the same physical properties but different chiral sense, so they have to be separated, and this term is with the help of the term called as agent called as resolving agent. For example, if you can see down racemic mixture, it has both the properties R and S. When an enantiomerically pure compound is added, it is called as resolving agent, which is added. There's a pair of diastereomers. That means they are different properties. They have different physical, chemical, and also they're not mirror images. So these properties are there, and it is easy for separation. What are the different techniques that are used? One is crystallization method, or preparative chromatography, or biocatalytic resolution, membrane technology, or supercritical fluid chromatography. Basically, HPLCs, those machines are used with the help of, in case of large scale separations, they use crystallization methods. With the help of catalyst and all, they come up with these chiral separation. So coming to chirality and drug delivery system. So it also has its impact on the drug delivery system. For example, graphene quantum dot is one of the drug delivery mechanism and also a system. Okay, just like you have a nanomolecules, we have liposomes, we have microspheres. Just like that, we have graphene quantum dot where for example, doxorubicin is a drug. It exists in both L and D form. Okay, L form has a more propensity to occupy and demolish these tumor spheroids and have a more number of drug delivery efficacy than the D form of the same doxorubicin. One more example is nimesulide or ibuprofen, where L form has superior adhesion, more retention, more bioavailability, and has strong anti-inflammatory property compared to the D form of the same drugs. Okay, so they have these mesoporous silica nano carriers where they come up with only L forms of these chiral compounds where they can do all these activities. And one more drug being paclitaxel, which is given in as a form of chiral macrocyclic carrier, where they have a D enantiomers have a longer circulation time, plasma exposure is also more, so it has good impact on chirality. So this D isomer of paclitaxel is used as a chiral macrocyclic carrier. So we have so many newer drug delivery systems that are coming up because of this chirality. Coming to personalized medicine and chirality. So we talk about chirality, personalized medicine these days a lot, right? So personalized medicine, basically according to the genetic variability of the individual, the drug is being properly tailored. We call it as tailoring the treatment according to the genetic variability of that person. Okay, you can see in this graph, Caucasians, Africans, Asians, and Hispanic, they have a different metabolizing capacity. We all know so many drugs and so many cytochrome P, 2C9, 2C19, all these have a different forms of chirality. Okay, one example is 2C19, where it includes omeprazole, proton pump inhibitors, clopidogrel, etc., where there's a polymorphism, genetic polymorphism, which is seen, where with the help of coming to clopidogrel, which is a prodrug, which is used as an antiplatelet. In Asians, there is reduced activation and the chance of treatment failure is more, whereas in Caucasians, it are more metabolizes and faster. Okay, so this is the one of the personalized medicine with the chirality, which has some effect. Okay, because of stereoselective metabolism, the metabolic enzymes and pathways are involved in these cases. And coming to what are the research aspects that you can look into in case of chirality is that computational drug design. You know, right? Lock and key model, similar way, the molecular dynamic simulations and mechanical calculations to predict chiral drug-drug interactions with the unprecedented accuracy. They have come up with such drug design development with the help of computer. Okay, simulation computers, where you can, this can be a research work in case of chiral drugs. And we also want some of the biomarkers where it should be valid and it should be reliable and cost effective in such cases. So identification of the genetic and metabolic biomarkers to guide enantioselective dosing strategies in clinical practice. And they've also come up with novel drug delivery systems, and I told you about few of the novel drug delivery systems where the chiral drug carriers and targeted delivery systems, they maintain stereochemically integrity while enhancing the therapeutic efficacy. So these are the various parts where the researchers are being in chirality and also can be a part of your future research work also. So to conclude, embracing chirality for safer and more effective betterment of the patient, scientific advancement, continued research in this stereochemistry, it drives innovation. It also helps in improving the therapeutic outcomes and reducing the adverse effects, and also economic growth because of this. Instead of coming up with a racemic mixture, the single enantiomer is having a better activity. Why not repair the same? Understanding and harnessing molecular chirality represents a fundamental shift towards precision medicine, personalized medicine, and there will be more opportunities to develop safer, more effective treatment that can serve human health and betterment of the society. So these are my references. I hope you got at least some points regarding this chirality.
Very nice. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very nice presentation, Dr. Industry.
Thank you, sir.
I know it's a very difficult one. Actually, it is not a usual one. A lot of chemistry is involved.
Yes,
which
it
we
is
are
basically
not-
of the stereochemistry which you're talking about rather than the actual drug. So I try to include so many examples so that it is easy for us to understand. I hope
Yeah.
many of them have understood. We should see.
Yeah, like we always like, chemistry. We very much like the chemistry during our second PUC, first PUC and all. After that, most probably in MBBS, biochemistry was, not definitely a like, we never liked it because of so much of difficulties involved in that, in remembering. But later, we ended up pharmacology. Again, it involves a lot of chemistry, pharmacology, pharmacological action, so many things. Definitely it's a very interesting subject and very innovative subject also, and very upcoming subject also. And it will continue to be a very interesting subject because every drug, when it is born, it will have so many things, right from the good effects, bad effects, pharmacovigilance requirements, and the formulation development difficulties, conducting the clinical trial, and on the top of it, concentrating on which is better, which kind of R isomer or S isomer, what is that, which is going to be very useful to a patient. That is finding that will be another, big challenge. As all of us know, when we have, something, when we have something good about something good, you will also imbibe something bad along with it also. Like if a enantiomer is very strong in pharmacological action, then you will also get the adverse drug reactions along with it. When another drug is less less impactful, means even the adverse events are also less. Like this, but indications can be tailored according to its pharmacological action, toxicity, and many more insights. Maybe we have a very nice comments coming in. Most of them, they all happy with this. And one question they have asked that, is isotretinoin chiral molecule, does it have R and S forms? Or do they have dextro or liver
Only
forms?
cis and transform.
Yeah.
They
so you
basically have cis
mentioned-
and transform. Not all the molecules can be R and S form. So here
Yeah.
it is cis and transform.
Yeah. So they are cis and transform. So that is already discussed here by the. I think next is, can you elaborate on atrophisomerism? Atrophisomerism. So can you go through this? There is a comment. Atrophisomerism. There is a comment.
I mean, atropism, we have something called as atropimer, where the rotation is hindered.
Yeah,
The rotation around the plane polarized light is usually hindered, and that comes too much of chemistry. That's why I didn't highlight about it. But otherwise, I mean, there is no proper rotation of those molecules. That hindrance is called as atropimerism.
Atropimerism, correct. Okay.
Atropy isomerism.
Yeah, you did mention.
Around the single bond, there is hindrance in rotation.
Okay, so I add to the notice of everyone that this whatever the presentation today it is being done, it is also recorded and it is placed in the MPS channel, YouTube channel. So I know that it's a little bit heavy class. It's too much for one person to understand in one go. So don't worry, this recorded session is already available in our YouTube channel. So you keep on, keep listening to it regularly, more than one time, two times, or three times. And I'm sure, some information will go into you will understand definitely, and it's a very nice class also. But like it is, since we are all doctors, since we are all pharmacologists, it is a very simplified form what she has mentioned here, and it's a big chapter again, and a lot of chemistry will be there, which we are not very much interested also. Okay, we are very much interested in what are the pharmacological effects, how they change, and how it is impacting the therapeutic activities. That's most important thing what we want to know. But those who are like, especially there are some pharmacy students are also there, and definitely they can go back to the books and then know more about the chemistry part. Okay, so with this, I would like to congratulate. Maybe you can stop sharing if you can.
Stop.
Dr. Shiva, may I speak?
Yes,
May I
madam.
ask two questions?
Yes, madam. Please go ahead.
Yeah, the one question is, madam, you gave us the US FDA guidelines.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but I don't know what is happening in India. And the other question is, to develop and research drugs in India, particularly the Ayurvedic drugs, because we have so many herbs and natural medicines. Can this methodology be used to develop drugs that are more conducive to our people and cheaper? Thank you.
Coming to the Ayurvedic medicines, there are so many active ingredients which will be involved in that. The active principles are also so many things. So develop into a single molecule, and whichever the active ingredient you want, just like we do all these natural products which we obtain, right? Alkaloids. So from that we can think of doing enantiomer rather than the exact Ayurvedic products which they can use, ma'am. The natural alkaloids can be used. I am not sure whether the full components of Ayurvedic products what they use can be done, but I will check this.
No, I think you are right. On that industry, what is happening is that Ayurvedic products, there will be multiple molecules will be there in one product, and boiling down to one individual molecule, it will be very difficult. And also, generally Ayurvedic products are considered to be little bit more safer because it will also have other ingredients like agonists or some kind of any antidotes for any kind of adverse drug reactions, or some phytocompounds will also be there in that. So in that way, the most important concentration of the active ingredient will be little bit less than the less. So chances of developing the adverse drug reactions are also less. But identifying a particular ingredient and then moving like a allopathic drug, then it becomes an allopathic drug. It will not continue to be a Ayurvedic product. So if they boil down to one product or one molecule and then start working on enantiomer, then it becomes pharmacology, allopathic pharmacology, and it may not continue as a Ayurvedic or natural medicine. So that's why it's difficult for us to comment on it. Okay, thank you.
And the FDA guidelines, what are the guidelines in India?
Actually, coming to the Indian guidelines, they usually told, since the drug molecules are basically we follow more of the FDA guidelines for drug approvals or everything. So Indian guidelines are very less. They have not come up with any particular guidelines in India, just regarding the awareness they have told about using the prior enantiomers, but no, there is no specific Indian guidelines for development of these drugs, as I say.
Typically, as far as if we are talking about any particular drug, definitely we need to talk about its complete pharmacology, chemistry, and everything. We have to highlight everything during the drug dossier submission. But if you are trying to polarize into any one enantiomer or anything, at that time definitely you need to like suppose if you are going for esomeprazole. Now already we have esomeprazole already in the market. Levocetirizine is already there. Cetirizine came first, and now we have the levocetirizine.
Levocetirizine.
So like this, like they will definitely, they will have to register separately. Suppose if you are polarizing to one kind of one type of isomer, then you have to register accordingly, and then show your therapeutic and risks, therapeutic benefits and risks accordingly, document it appropriately, and then ask for the approval. So the procedure is same, whether it is Enantiomer, it is a company. Yeah, the procedure will be same only, but only thing, what you claim is also most important. Anyone else? Okay, so if you don't have any further queries, so let me congratulate our speaker today. Let me show the certificate of appreciation. So congratulations, Dr. Industry.
Thank you.
For doing this great job of presenting this chirality of the drug, which is a little bit difficult subject, and I'm sure our participants are benefited from this activity. So looking forward for new people. Looking forward for in future some more interesting discussions from your side, and whenever you feel like doing one more, please feel free to connect with us, and we will definitely support you. And I'm sure the activities like this will benefit our fraternity and all the students who are studying in MD pharmacology or any other pharmacology where the pharmacology subject is impacted. And thank you so much for your active participation in society activities, and wish you all the best. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for being. Thank you.
So we will end today's discussion. Thank you, everyone, for active participation, and we look forward for future programs. We will announce the next webinar or next activity. And as I told you, we will be getting ready for the next conference also. I request all the participants to make a note of this and start preparing for any paper or presentation so that when we give the opportunity, we look forward for your active participation and seeing you in person. We are always, most of the time, we are on webinars, and we are seeing you all through the Zoom, and it will be nice to have you all active interaction physically in a face-to-face meeting. Thank you. Looking forward for future activities. Good job.